Morning, everyone. So, firstly, welcome to this session. So this session is going to be looking at, it's part of our strategy session at AM. My name is James Lees. I'm lucky enough to be chairing this session today. And this session is kindly sponsored and supported by Impel, as you've seen on the screen. So the topic of this session, how quickly will AI overtake your sales team? A very provocative statement, and I can see it's got quite a bit of interest, judging by the people that are here today. So, artificial intelligence is being positioned by some as the death of the sales executive. This strategy session will look at how transformational AI will be from an operational and customer perspective in the coming years, as well as having the chance for us to talk about how my dealer groups will have to adopt their medium-term investments and long-term strategy as AI permeates the motor industry. And above all, making sure how we understand how we can deliver AI without losing the personal touch. So quite a deep conversation for us to be getting involved in. I'm lucky enough I'm going to be joined by 4 experts. We're really lucky to have these people with us today. But before I bring them on stage and we start taking some questions, and please feel free to ask questions as well as we get further into this session, I am going to introduce Ben Cooper, is Managing Director of Impel International. He has a responsibility for the strategy and growth of Impel across the international markets. And Ben's going to just spare a few minutes with us, just sharing some insights around what Impel see as far as AI and the insights we've seen at Impel over the last 5 or 6 years. So, Ben?
I'm also going to time myself so I do not get egregious with time usage. Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for your time this morning. My job is really just to set the scene, and I've got 3 simple goals of this initial kind of 10, 15-minute presentation. It's really to kind of level set. AI gets used as a term in many different contexts, in many different ways, so the goal of this session is really just to try and level set around some definitions, explain where AI is being used in dealership businesses today, and critically answer the question why. What is the opportunity for everyone in the room as it relates to this pretty nascent technology? 2023 has definitely been the year where AI has gone mainstream. But if we think of this as a technology, this really kind of dates back to the 1940s, the advent of the computer. The first research paper that was actually written on AI was in 1943. And it was all about neural networks, which is still the architecture of what AI is today. But it wasn't until OpenAI released ChatGPT that the world really kind of paid attention, and the phenomenal user adoption of this technology really just kind of speaks to the potential that it has in every one of your businesses out there at the moment. Ever since that technology hit the markets, we've seen mass media coverage of artificial intelligence, and it's really been about seeking these efficiency goals and what that efficiency can mean to businesses in terms of serving customers better along the journey. The data on the screen that you can see at the moment is from a recent study by HubSpot that looked at 1,300 businesses that are using AI today, and I want to touch on a couple of these points. But really, it's in this promise of productivity, and like any kind of generational step change in technology, whether it's mechanization, automation, computerization, really AI should be thought of in the same context. Like AI is here to stay. I would argue it's not something that you can sit on the sidelines of. It's something that you all need to engage with because it will kind of largely define competitiveness of your businesses in the years to come. But the critical thing, and certainly at least how we think about AI as it relates to your businesses, this isn't about replacing people. This is about putting technology alongside people. And if you just look at the second quote on the slide, just imagine what that would mean to your businesses if every employee if every team member had an extra 2.5 hours in their day, like what could you do with that as a business? In terms of serving customers more effectively, in terms of growing more efficiently. And again, the businesses that do engage with these technologies are going to find themselves with competitive advantage. And it's really quite rare. If you think about most products and most technologies, there's normally trade-offs. But the great thing with what the promise of AI gives us is the dual benefits of productivity and customer service. So we're not forsaking one for the other. We're making more efficient, more lean organizations and delivering better customer experiences at the same time. I skipped past this, and I won't go through all the statistics, but from this study, the first statistic there, 85% of salespeople that are using AI and automation today say that it makes their prospecting efforts more effective. So we would argue that AI is not about the death of the salesperson, it's actually the salesperson's best friend. It's the person in the call center's best friend, it's the person on the service desk's best friend. This isn't just about sales, this is about all of the different functions across the retail operation. But here's the catch. AI on its own has lots and lots of different challenges. The first statistic on this slide says that 47% of marketers that are using generative AI today know that it's producing information that is factually inaccurate. And you've probably all seen these different examples that kind of come up. And so, like, our belief is what is critical about leveraging the benefits of these technologies is how you embed them within your organizations. That is about people, that is about processes. Critically, it's about systems as well. So it's about integration with core CRM, DMS, inventory systems, CDPs. And it's not about just the sexy stuff, the generative AI. It's about embedding this with all the other elements of machine learning, natural language processing, and conversational AI to really create brand-safe executions of this technology. Before I go any further, I just want to level set on a couple of definitions because, again, these terms get kind of thrown around all over the show. So AI is a computer program like any other, right? It takes inputs, it processes them, it generates outputs. What's kind of unique and special about AI is that it teaches computers to be able to synthesize, to understand, to generate knowledge in the same way that humans generate knowledge, or very similar ways to the way that humans generate knowledge, and that lets us predict outcomes. It helps us make decisions. You'll hear this term around conversational AI, and really that's using a branch of technology called natural language processing. The job of that is to decipher human language and to be able to respond to it. And then generative AI is used in the same breath sometimes as large language models, and this is a branch of technology where the goal of this technology is to generate new content. So it uses all the training inputs, the data sets, and that content could be written, it could be audio, it could be artwork, the many, many other ways in which AI is being pervasive within our lives today. And it's in the combination of all of this which is where the benefits to businesses can be unlocked. So why automotive? How can this fit within your organizations and your businesses? Well, I think over the last 4 or 5 years, we've probably seen a completely unprecedented level of change. Global health pandemic, supply disruption, manufacturers changing business models. We've seen stock challenges, all of this set alongside different consumer expectations, the need for 24/7 real-time engagement that is meaningful. And trying to manage the full customer life cycle at scale becomes infinitely complex and I would argue impossible. Because when we look at that customer journey, from the very first time a customer starts the discovery and research part of that journey to buying a car and ultimately buying another car and everything in between, there are many, many, many touch points along that journey. There are many, many opportunities to lose sales opportunities. There are many opportunities for service relationships to end prematurely or not to even begin at all if we're not being in front of the customer on their terms when they want us to be in front of them. So if you think about some of the critical steps in the car buying journey, when a customer submits a lead into your business, often that customer can be in business in market in their buying journey for 60 or more days, and that's a real challenge to be following up with customers and making sure that your brands are in front of them when they're ready to take their next steps. When you move into the service, the after-sales journey, it gets even more complex. You've got all of these recurring different touch points with a customer, along with certain one-off touch points, whether that's manufacturer recall, warranty expiration, lease expiration, and so forth. And so to deliver that kind of white glove level of service, highly customized, personalized experiences, people just don't have the human capital within their organizations to do that. And as a consequence, we lose opportunities, whether that's through the sales funnel or on the service side. So the real promise of what this technology can mean to our industry and to your businesses is moving from this kind of concept of what the academic papers would call organizational drag, which is essentially all those kind of manual, burdensome, labor-intensive tasks that are very low value adding but need to be done, to a model in which technology can support all of those parts of the journey whilst leaving the team members to focus on the high value adding tasks. Salespeople in dealerships don't enjoy chasing customers to get them on the phone. They enjoy being on the phone with them, and the same in the service departments and other areas across the business. So if we just take one area, and I've touched on it, I just wanted to ground this in like a specific example so it kind of makes it less esoteric, if you will. When we look across all of the customers that use technology that we provide today from a lead perspective, 45% of the leads today are submitted outside of hours. And there's a real gap from a technology perspective in delivering not just an automatic response, but a meaningful response. And what these technologies are enabling us to do now is not just say, thank you for your inquiry, someone will get back to you, when the business opens tomorrow morning, but they'll actually be able to answer questions about inventory at a detailed vehicle specification level. They'll be able to answer questions about your warranty offering. They'll be able to answer questions about whether you're prepared to ship your vehicles from one end of the country to the other end of the country. And so instead of a salesperson coming in on a Monday morning and picking up leads from Sunday evening and starting that process, those salespeople can come in on a Monday morning and see calendarized appointments with those customers. That's the promise of what this technology can do, and that's what certain dealers are already doing today. You've then got this second challenge. 40% of all the leads that we see coming into our clients' CRM systems, those customers are still in market more than 2 weeks, 40% of them at least, more than 2 weeks after that initial lead submission. Most dealership businesses have, and most salespeople have a recency bias. So they'll work leads really, really well for maybe 24, 48 hours, but often leads will be marked as a lost lead status within a CRM very, very prematurely. Not that the customer's out of market, it's just that the sales agent has not been able to get in touch with them. And then you've got this final bucket, the 30% of leads where customers may never actually respond, but you don't know who that 30% is, so you have to work all leads. And there's just a fundamental resource challenge with trying to do that with people alone. Now, the people are critical in this process, but their efforts can be tailored to the high value adding tasks, as I referred to before, and let technology support some of these other areas. Very quickly, this comes from a real life example. We put it in a GIF so it's easy to kind of present. But what this shows is a customer submitting an inquiry at 8:30 in the evening about availability, an automated response within 60 seconds, confirming availability of the vehicle, but also trying to schedule and push towards an appointment. Later that evening, the customer has got more questions, as customers often do. In the US, as this example is pulled from, does this have the Carfax report? If that's available as part of inventory feeds, then that can be played back. Equally, it could have been a question about, does it have the sunroof, the moonroof, the sound system? The following day, the customer follows up. Now, the dealership is open at this point, but it doesn't need a human being to respond to this question. It's a very simple one. Here are our appointment hours. This is where we're located. Let me know when you can come in. The customer has another question. They provide the time that they want to come in, but they say, hey, listen, I've got a finance issue. My credit score is maybe a little bit low. Again, natural language processing can understand that. It can answer it according to how each dealer wants that question answered. So one dealer may have a very, very different way of answering a question around finance to another one. So these technologies have to be highly bespoke to the businesses that are using them. There's a lot of information on this slide, and I'm just going to cut to the point in the interest of time. But what this does, it speaks to the shift in how team members end up using their time. It compares 2 time periods for 3 dealership groups. The first time period before they were using AI, the second time period when they were using AI. And the really key thing to point out here is that when the AI was being used, the team members stopped sending as many emails. They sent 34% less emails. But that meant that they were able to spend their time on more high value adding tasks. Any general manager or dealer principal wants their sales team on the phone. They don't want them sending emails. The salespeople don't want to be sending emails either. The communications still got sent, and in fact more got sent, but they got sent by technology. And the thing that really matters on this is that lead to appointment conversion rate goes up. So the leaky bucket starts to get plugged, if you will, in terms of the opportunity cost. More communications, more personalized, more real time. So just to wrap up this section, you can read this for yourself. The high-level takeaway is this is about unlocking efficiency and customer experience at the same time. And we strongly believe, at least for the next probably 25, 30 years, that all of us in the room have jobs to do and things to do. So it's about supporting and setting technology alongside systems and people. So with that, back to James, and I think we get everyone back on the stage.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Ben. Can you hear me? There we go. So thank you very much, very insightful. I think probably the takeaway from that, given the question of this session, how quickly will AI overtake your sales team? I think the answer from the Impel perspective is actually it becomes part of your sales team, and actually probably becomes one that works 24/7, doesn't give you grief, doesn't want to pay right. Anyway, all of those points as well, but it fits into that process. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the next time for the Q&A session. So I'd like to welcome up on stage our guests who are going to help us unpack this and get into the detail. So firstly, we're really lucky we've got Kim Costello here from Pendragon. So Kim, thank you for joining us. Kim is Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Customer Officer, and she's responsibility for leading the group's marketing, internal and external communication teams and the overarching customer experience. So Kim will join us in a second. We also have Alex Iriani, so Senior Manager of Analytics at Deloitte. Alex, it's great to have you here. Alex is working and leading the consultancy work around generative AI in the automotive sector, but more widely retail as well. So we'll get some great insight from Alex. And then by last but no means least, we've got Sean McGurr as well. So Sean is Chief AI and Data Officer at Devon. They're a Dutchware software development consultancy with interests around how AI can be utilized with connected cars and how it can be used to be more predictive and help make business decisions. And Sean was previously also head of data at Cox Automotive. So please help me welcome them, join them up on stage. Oh, sorry, and Ben, can't forget Ben. Sorry, Ben. So we're gonna jump in. There will be a roaming mic, which if you have got any questions, please put your hand up and we'll get to that question. But I suppose starting off, so I'll jump here. So we're going to come to you, Kim, first, if we may. So from your perspective, I mean, can you just talk a little bit generally about how you view AI as a tool for the Pendragon Group, what your thoughts and strengths are on its weaknesses, as well as how Pendragon is approaching using AI within the business?
Sure. So I think when it comes to, let me start kind of with the last one first. When it comes to how we're using AI in the business, we're really looking for different ways, and I really appreciate what Ben was saying about the leaky bucket, something that we talk about a lot. We're looking for different ways that we can assist our salespeople and our marketing team to help drive more efficient leads and free up a lot of time. So I think when you're looking at the various opportunities that are out there and the various technologies that are out there, you have to be really, really careful on what you use and the ability for your teams to be skilled enough to use those. One of the things we found is if you don't have these skills required, say in your operations team, then the stuff that you are doing in your marketing team doesn't line up and it's a bad customer experience. So you have to make sure that the skills are there and that you're putting in the time to upskill your associates or your employees, and that your employees are upskilling themselves as well. So while we totally agree AI is not going to take over for the salespeople, we be very clear with that, it is another tool that they have in order to make them more productive. One of the comparisons I like to use is bank tellers. Everybody thought cash points or ATMs were going to take over and bank tellers were going to be obsolete. That's not what happened. What happened is the bank tellers, instead of just counting pounds out, they were upskilled themselves and became revenue generators for the bank system, as well as making more money for themselves and more profitable. So it will change the way we do business, but it won't replace. It will simply allow for our associates and our employees to become more efficient, much like what Ben just pointed out, and generate more profitability for us as retailers.
So I suppose to that point, in your role as Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Customer Officer,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done before you even start thinking about bringing AI and about those back-end processes and training your team and understanding this.
Without question. I think that's where a lot of times things fall down. People will say, oh, we have this technology and it's going to change everything, it's going to solve everything, we've plugged it in. Nobody bothered to look at all the knock-on effects of that, look at upskilling their teams, look at making sure everybody's on the page, looking at what this technology can do. The technology doesn't work on its own. You have to have the capabilities in your team. You have to have the right processes in place, because if not, the people that suffer are your customers, and they're not going to come back. Nobody wants to sit there and have a bad experience, and especially in automotive retail, it's challenging. We're all selling similar products, if not the exact same product. So the experience the customer has matters.
And I think that's important, the points around, this is great about it gives the business efficiency or potentially and allows people to do jobs that they're good at or spend more time talking to customers, but you mustn't forget the customer experience.
Absolutely.
A lot of those solutions out there right now, you'll see them actually, they can be detrimental to the customer experience. I've used them before, some of these chatbots, and you go, I feel like I'm going round in circles. Can someone just give me an answer?
You're absolutely right. And one final point, and I will not take the whole session, but what you see from customers is if they buy something solely online with no human intervention, the return rate tends to be higher, whether that be a sweater, whether that be a very expensive sweater, or whether that be a significant purchase like an automobile. Yeah. So that human intervention and that human interaction is innately important to us as human beings. So I think that's the thing that really has to be driven home here. We're still human at our core. AI is a tool, regardless of which version of AI you're looking at, it's always a tool to help. It is not a replacement. If you do not have those human interactions, you're not going to have that experience that you want with your customer, and they're going to go elsewhere to find that human experience. People still like to be known by their name. They still want that important, those tactical feelings to be had. So they still want to feel important, and that has to be done by your sales associate or your advisor, and that has to be done in a really authentic way with AI as an assistant to that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Can I add to that? I think it's a really great point, and I think you've talked about the importance of that kind of personal interaction with a customer, but it's also super important to have that personal interaction with the AI tool. The AI tool has to learn from you, and it's not your kind of classic technology implementation where you can plug it in and use it. You have to constantly train it. You have to constantly give it new information. You have to teach it your tone of voice, and you can't. It doesn't do that in isolation.
Yeah. And I was going to say, actually, Alex, coming to you from your involvement with AI and looking at it broader than just automotive. Actually, have you got any examples of where you see that happening today, either in a good way or where actually they have made those fundamental mistakes?
Yeah, I think in automotive and the wider retail industry, businesses are still very much in that kind of an experimentation phase. I don't think I've seen it implemented at scale in a meaningful way yet. And I think they're still laying that kind of foundation to enable them. So as Kim says, training your decision makers, training your workforce, getting your data into one place. Those are all really critical before you can use AI in earnest.
Absolutely. And then, Sean, from your perspective, to that point, actually, and in your role as a consultancy, is what are you talking to your customers about when it comes to AI, and how do you teach the AI and train the AI to respond?
I think there's a big trust barrier between a lot of human AI interactions, and I think in automotive salespeople have lots of reasons to be skeptical about the many waves of technology that have been promised to completely change everything. I think everyone's absolutely right that customers, want a personal experience. The various websites starting with C would have wiped out this entire room if people wanted to buy without humans, right? This wouldn't happen because you just go to a website and buy like you buy from Amazon, completely with as minimal personal interaction as possible. So it's all about, and to Kim's point, the product is the same, right? So how do you get something unique and distinctive out there to the customer, right? And if that can only come from the humans, right? And I think what automotive is going to have fun with is you're under a number of different kind of incentive structures. You have a brand. If you're a franchise dealer, you have what the manufacturer wants you to do. You have local market concerns. You know who your competition are. And so the example of the appointment booking is really great. Yep. That's a really good level-setting starting point. Once everyone's got that, it's like an arms race. And then to actually be personable, you need to go one step forward. So we know we all hate those chatbots, including automotive chatbots. Every time I try and get service from a dealer, like book a service, it's just horrific. Yeah. The cost of doing better than that has dropped rapidly, so there's no reason not to adopt that. But I think beyond efficiency, beyond getting salespeople back on the phone, like how is it going to give you an edge? And something that will be a bit different for every customer. Yeah,
it's interesting. And I think if you think about the automotive model today and actually how groups are being acquired, that they're multi-brand. So now you start trying to put AI into a front end of someone who wants to talk about Pendragon rather than BMW or Jaguar. And actually as a consumer now, I may be brand agnostic. Yep. How's the chat going to deal with that and understand the message that BMW wants to portray to the one that Pendragon wants to portray? So you're right, there's a load of work. And to that point, Ben, what have you seen in the work that Impel have been doing already about integration of systems and solutions? Because a lot of this data sits in multiple places. Yeah. How does that work?
But also, I think to pick up on what Sean said as well, I think that technology is at a point already where every business's voice can be expressed in different ways through these models, right? They do require training, they require specific prompt engineering to be able to leverage that, but they can reflect each business individually, they can reflect each brand individually. The critical thing is, as you mentioned, alluded to, is having these systems integrate with the core IT architecture that sits in dealer businesses today. And oftentimes, the larger the business, the more fragmented that dealer system set can look, right? But it's like having an automated technology be able to respond to questions about inventory obviously requires inventory inputs. Like, what stock do dealers have? And what are the features of that stock? And how can an AI assistant help guide choice? And that will be very different for very different customers as they navigate through the kind of purchase funnel, from maybe an opaque understanding of what they want at the top to something, perhaps much more detailed and more transactional as they go through the journey. But the plumbing piece of this is super important. Tech for tech's sake just doesn't work, but how you integrate that within a business is critical, systems and people.
So. Yeah, absolutely. So has anyone got any initial questions out there before we move on? So anyone? Nothing. Oh yes, just one there, Mr. Wiseman.
Morning. Thanks, guys. Ben, great presentation, very leveled. Thank you. Three-part question, really. First of all, for most of the dealers, or a lot of the dealers in the room, independents and smaller dealers, where do we start to look at this? So, yeah, it's a huge, huge topic. So where's the starting point for an independent or a not Pendragon in this respect? It doesn't have the resource start to look. Secondly, what are the impact? You've talked about sales, but after sales, where can we integrate it into after sales? And I think thirdly, are there any real life, you showed an example on there, but UK dealer groups that are live with AI currently today?
Yeah. Do you want to take that one, or shall I? So I suppose to your last point, are there dealers utilising the technology that Ben just said to you? Yes, there are. So from an Impel perspective, there are several dealers utilising. There's three levels of there's sales AI, service AI, and chat. So from the perspective, and car buying as well, actually. So from the perspective of sales, yes, we have some dealers already utilising this technology. I think to the points that's been made on the panel already is that quick to go. We want to get it in. We want to start looking at the efficiencies. And I think in some instances, you just need to take that step back and understand what the processes we've got in place today. And actually, we'll always say that actually when we talk to any customer about implementing AI, before we jump in, let's just sit down and map out your business process as it sits today. What's your customer journey process over the top of that to understand where AI can fit into that? Because just throwing it straight in, to answer to your first point as well, Chris, to throw it straight in would be a mistake. You need to understand where it's going to sit. And then once you've decided where it's going to sit, is then how do you now look at your business model and understand how the AI is going to work within that business model? So what changes will you need to make sure your sales team are aware of? So just some of the examples we're seeing at the moment is where we've got a chat solution in place, and the chat is always feeding information back into the customer CRM system so they can see the conversation that's happening. But the salesperson's really keen to jump in. And they're jumping into that conversation, which then they're stopping the AI, and then they'll be busy tomorrow and off doing something else, and they've forgotten about that customer, and the customer's gone again. You've got to let the AI do its job, and at the right point, if we've got the right triggers in there, it knows to hand it off for a phone call or book an appointment. So I think in answer to your question, Chris, I'd say if you're trying to look at bringing AI into your business, probably the first step is to sit down with a business such as ours to say, well, actually, where do I think AI can play a part in my business right now? And actually then how will that fit into my business model? And then move forward from there.
Can I take the first question?
Sure, yeah.
So at the other end of the spectrum, in terms of complexity and business model, you have independence. You know, the paid version of ChatGPT is $20 a month. So if you're interested enough in it and you want to start using it to do things like generating ideas for marketing campaigns, a new way to describe the same old vehicle that everyone else is trying to hire, the barrier to start training yourself, we talked about trust and people getting used to this kind of technology, you can also start at that end and start experimenting. So maybe not everyone in your business is going to be super keen to do that, but at least one person will be.
And from that perspective, you mean as in how you can start looking at using AI rather than plugging chat into your front end of your website and letting it go, which we know it can hallucinate and cause challenges. It's just about you understanding
AI. You get
AI.
the benefit of separating it from those systems and learning to work with AI to build trust and then choose the right way to integrate it.
Okay.
And I would say, for me, when I came into Pendragon, we were our data was everywhere. It was siloed in 17 silos. It was aggressive. So I would say make sure your data is clean in a place where you need it, whether it's a data lake, but get the data architecture. That is really step one before you want to plug anything in, is understanding your data, where it is, have a partner that you trust, much like James was saying, to come in and sit down then and say, what can we do? Because if you're looking to even test with like a ChatGPT or something on remarketing or talking to customers, if your data is not in one place and it's not easily accessible, you plugging in technology isn't going to help anything. It's going to do nothing, and then you're going to find the technology useless and just leave it and go about the way that you've always done it. So I think with these things, when you put any new technology in, you have to make sure all the pieces are in place, because you kind of get one chance to sell it to your teams. And if it doesn't work the first time, we all know. I mean, I sold cars in dealerships. If it didn't work, we just worked around it. And that you don't want to do, because then any further technology you introduce is not going to be taken.
Yes, Alex.
I think implementing an AI solution can feel like a monumental task. Even the simplest use case can be very complex. And aside from knowing where to go after, and starting small with trialing ChatGPT, for example, and then being able to scale fast, I think one thing that we're seeing businesses look at very early on, aside from the trust element, is really educate yourself on where your data is going, especially if you are using something like ChatGPT. Be cognizant of inputting confidential information, for example. So I'm all for playing around with the technology, but just also have that kind of your risk hat on when you do that.
Absolutely.
I think the first of the three questions, the prioritization one is a really interesting one. I think at one level, like any other business decision, you look at like where the opportunity is in terms of like the biggest wins for your business. Which kind of sounds obvious. I think the other way of looking at it is if you walk around your organizations and you look at people in their roles that are just doing things that are manual and repetitive, and they do them day in, day out, like that stuff will just go. That will change.
It will be overtaken.
Exactly. Yeah, like technology will play those roles. So I think that's the kind of critical thing of like, where can you find efficiency? As a company, we only focus on a relatively narrow range of customer-facing, if you will, applications of AI, but there's many other areas across your business that are kind of interesting for that. And I think the second part of the question is, where do you start with service? Like the after-sales department has often been that kind of massive challenge, hugely busy in the morning, hugely busy in the afternoon. That's when you're doing the kind of like the really important human stuff that technology doesn't replace, bringing the customer in, giving them a great brand experience. But those teams don't have enough time then to do all the outreach that they need to do to keep things going. And the service base may be quite full at the moment. That doesn't mean to say that you're always working on the most profitable work. So it requires rigor and analysis to start to think about it like that. And clearly on the sales side, demand starts to get a little bit kind of tetchy, starting to feel a little bit like Christmas too early in the UK right now. Well, that means that you have to work every lead a little bit harder as well. So it's kind of, that's how we've thought about it, but many areas of the business.
Any other questions? No one. Oh yes, sorry, just down the front. Thank you.
Hello. Hi guys. I just wanted to touch on the amount of training that AI is going to need in order to get to the level of the example that we saw earlier. Now, I'm an ex-salesman. I used to sell the cars. It's very annoying having to spend half an hour chasing people, booking in appointments. They want to cancel, they want to change. How much training are we going to have to put in for AI to realise these inquiries that are coming in and get an accurate response back to our customer? Because I feel that would kind of be the most important thing that dealers want to see. They want this AI to be accurate. The implementation and stuff isn't really a concern to me because there's people out there who are going to know how to do that, are going to learn how to implement it. Different systems are going to talk to different systems. That will come. But the main concern is how accurate are these replies going to be, and how much training are we going to have to give AI before it gives these accurate answers almost 100% of the time?
Do your salespeople give accurate answers 100% of the time? So I'm just being the cantankerous AI person and saying the barrier we want to set is the one that makes you more money, that gets you ROI. I think perfection is difficult. Now, certainly answering questions about finance, and in the UK market, you might be configuring a different kind of answer to that. So it's, when you say you want 100%, near 100% accuracy on everything, I know you don't, because that's not how you sell vehicles, right? You need to set the standards that are fit for purpose for different parts of, to get the person on the phone, you'll say almost anything, and that's how you should do it, right? When it comes to giving advice about finance, that's when you need to be, and everything between there probably has a different accuracy standard.
I don't think there's a rule of thumb. I think the technology is growing rapidly and becoming more and more powerful. It's doubling, I think, in power every 3 months, which is hugely transformational in terms of pace. I think that kind of training should be embedded perfectly into your processes, as we've talked about. So it's not like you have to tell it information to train it. It's more that, when you input your data, or this lead closed, or you converted this one, or they're going to come back in a week's time, it learns from those data points that you're already inputting as part of your process. So the training itself can be fairly light touch from a salesperson's point of view.
Anyone else?
I don't want to go too technical on this, but so the way to think about this in simple terms is you've got these big, large language models, and the corpus of their knowledge is 3/4 of the internet. So they know a lot of stuff. And then companies like ours and many others, like what our role in the world is to do exactly what you've said, is to make things brand safe and ethical and not say stupid things to customers, right? And that's all about prompt engineering and fine-tuning. And if someone asks a question about a piece of stock, for example, not relying on the knowledge of the internet, but relying on knowledge. So you've got to know when to tap different knowledge sources to do that. But it's, I don't want to go too deep on that, usually.
They're the experts
Okay.
on how long it takes to implement, not me.
And I think to Ben's point, and part of the work that's been going on in Pell for the last few years is actually building that database. So it's understanding the intent of a question and what does a customer mean when it says this, and then to Ben's point, then using the technology that is available for us today to then go back and respond with empathy or whatever, so it feels much more of a realistic conversation. But to your point, yes, you have to train it. So the customers that come on board with us and with other businesses, I'm sure will go through a process of, now you build up my content management system so it knows how to answer questions specifically to Wessex for finance or Pendragon for part exchanges, because everyone wants a different type of messaging back. So it is achievable, it just takes some time.
It's more like finishing school rather than building it. Like booking calendar appointments is completely commoditized, right? But doing it in an automotive context where the appointments might vary and there's travel time, and that's the tricky bit. That's what requires the extra work.
And I think it's important to set appropriate expectations with your sales team and with the stakeholders in the company too, because there is a tendency to believe that once we start this or plug it in, it's going to be perfect and it's going to go right away. And that's not the case, that there is, as anything, a learning curve.
Yeah.
And in time it takes to embed. And much to your example of, if you jump in as a salesperson and you reset the AI, that creates its own set of problems. So
Absolutely.
It's that understanding and setting proper
And I think to that point is that actually if you had a salesperson in the showroom and model changes and you've still got to train them, and it's no different with the AI. What you put in today, you still need to go back and review tomorrow and all of those things. So the work never stops. So I think we've got time for maybe one more question. So yes, lady down over here, please.
Thank you. With the agency model, or not, with AI, with changing consumer demands, how would you promote being a salesperson in the automotive industry to the much needed talent we need out there?
There's one person on the panel to answer this one.
So with agency model, right, we have certain brands that are full agency or agency light or working towards agency. You have other brands that are stating they're moving into that. Look, the agency model has been floated around for a long time. That's going to happen. Some have gone in, some have not. Some are saying they will, some are saying they won't. So it's not a one size fits all. So I think that coming into the automotive industry, it's a really interesting time. And I've been saying this for a few years, and it remains a really interesting time. We've done so much, there's been so much change and so much advancement and so much that we focused on that we never used to prior to the pandemic, that I think it's an incredible time to come in, not as just a traditional retail salesperson, but with the amount of opportunities that there is to be had across everything in automotive. I think it's incredibly interesting to walk in now and to become a salesperson in a dealership. It's different than it was when I was selling cars. but the opportunities that you have are tremendously different. The upskilling, it's changed the way, and it will continue to change based on everything we've just talked about and so many other things. It will change the way you sell vehicles to people. But at the end of the day, it is selling vehicles, regardless of what model you're in, regardless of what tools are assisting you. Before computers were in every dealership, people were selling cars. It changed. So many regulations and policies have changed that have been better for the customer, sometimes more challenging for the sales associate. But I still think the automotive industry is an incredible place to get into, and the amount of opportunity that you have, it's not just about retail. There's so many careers that can be had in the automotive industry that it is still a great industry to get into and still a great time to get into the industry. And now with the amount of tech that we have at our disposal, if you get in with a group or a company or a brand that really is focused with growth mindset, then the ability for you to rise in your career and diversify is really unlimited. I don't think it's a hard sell to get in automotives. I think it's just different than it was a few years ago. But I'd argue way more exciting. The stuff I do on a daily basis is not what chief marketing officers used to do ever. And it's so cool, and it's constantly changing. And the fact that we now have the customer as a key focus in our industry is immensely different than it used to be. So absolutely, anybody who wants to sell cars, come. We want to hire you.
Well said. So I think just before we wrap up, I'd just be keen. So one piece of advice from all of you to the people sat in this room, if you're thinking about AI in your business right now, what's your recommendation? So
I would say I would go back to the cost of playing around. You need to be careful what you put into the internet, which was true 5 years ago and 10 years ago, right? But if, for example, you're trying to find an innovative way to describe this Prius versus that Prius, someone has done that on the internet, and some of that knowledge is in a large language model. So you can play around and start to get used to these kind of tools at a very low cost, low risk way. If you don't start, someone may overtake you, right? So there's no real excuse now to not just start trying.
Perfect, thank you. Alex?
I think we've talked about this a lot, but really honing in on where it's going to add value to your business, finding those key productivity plays, where you're going to, what are the experience plays, how can you drive a better experience with your customer, and those kind of innovation plays, and broadly 3 things to think about.
Thank you.
Sure.
Kim?
I'd say 2 things. One, find a partner or partners that you trust and are reputable. And then the other thing is to make sure you invest in upskilling your current employees and your workforce, and make sure that your associates or employees take the time to upskill themselves as well. Because if the skills aren't there, it doesn't matter what tools, what AI, whatever you want to talk about, it's not gonna work.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I think I said it before, but you just can't sit on the sidelines of this one. You gotta learn, you gotta test, but do it with caution, do it with people you trust.
Perfect. Okay, so I'm afraid that draws us to the end of this one. So firstly, I'd like to please welcome you join in thanking Sean, Alex, Kim, and Ben for joining us up on stage. Yeah. And I hope you found it an enjoyable session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day at AM Live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.